Imagine if you were not you. Rawls intuitively understood that a lot of the reason why societies don't become fairer is that those who benefit from current injustice are spared the need to think too hard about what it would have been like to be born in different circumstances. So he devised one of the greatest thought experiments in the history of political thought. He called it the veil of ignorance. Rawls asks us to imagine ourselves in a conscious, intelligent state before our own birth, but without any knowledge of what circumstances we're going to be born into. We wouldn't know what sort of parents we'd have, what our neighbourhoods would be like, and how the police and judicial systems might treat us, and so on. The question that Rawls asks us all to contemplate is, if we knew nothing about where we'd end up, what sort of a society would it feel safe to enter? The veil of ignorance draws our attention to the appalling risks involved in entering, for example, US society as if it were a lottery, without knowing if you'd wind up the child of an orthodontist in Scottsdale, Arizona, or as the offspring of a black single mother in the rougher bits of eastern Detroit. Any sane participant of the veil of ignorance experiment is going to want a society with a number of things in place. They'll want the schools to be very good, the hospitals to function brilliantly, unimpeachable and fair access to the law, and decent housing for everyone.
Yeah. And shout out to the School of Life. First of all, this is another. We had a clip in the first episode from the School of Life, and this is another one, and that's a great resource, huh?
Yeah, it is a great resource. And I just hit this one like yesterday. I was like, oh, this is great. What makes the whole, it's a philosophical, theoretical thought experiment. What makes it interesting is that it allows you to, like, in any situation, kind of strip away your own bias and strip away our own understanding of, like, gripes and the benefits and harms in our current present society that won't allow us to see certain situations more clearly. I think that's what's strong about it. Yeah. It has its limitations. I think it's theoretical. It's not like super useful in everyday life, but I think it does help with some guidance here. And so, like, with the issue of, like, being a landlord or a tenant, with the veil of ignorance, if you come in and think about any given situation, like there's a COVID-19 global crisis, there's all kinds of harm and pain and suffering, financial and physical, and all these things. And there's a landlord-tenant system, and rent is due. The question is, do we kick people out of their homes? Even 3 months from now, right? 3 months from now, you say, oh, don't do it for 3 months. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months from now, the veil of ignorance says you don't know if you're a landlord or a tenant. And if you don't know, like, you come in and you have to create systems that would give you freedom and also protect you, put you in a position that is not the worst off, that is not evicted and on the street. So it's helpful, but there's other things involved to carry.
Yeah, and I think it's a good moment to just mention that, like, it's a major weakness of the English language, and I think other languages too. I know in French it's the same in Spanish, but that you have one word for landlord when you're talking about, like, a lot of different realities, right? So, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're saying might not apply, in specific situations. For example, like if you're living in the basement of, like, a retired person who's living off of a meager pension, and the rent that you pay them is what allows them, them to keep paying their mortgage payments or whatever, and keep living in their primary home, then this is not really what we're talking about, right? Like, and I just thought I would take the opportunity to throw it out. But also, I mean, like, to be honest, I was a little shocked that this thought experiment was new in 1971. Like, it seems like something that humans would have come up with a lot earlier. But then I think in that same video, they mentioned later that he was really inspired by the Apollo mission and the images that came back of seeing the Earth. And I had heard this talked about before, like, oh, that changed the world. And, as somebody born in 1985, it was like, yeah, sure, I guess that makes sense. It changed the world to be able to see the world for the first time. But but then this seems like a concrete example of, like, that thought experiment hadn't been written down before. Is shocking.
Yeah, it may have been written down before. Obviously, this dude, he
but he's famous for it. He's famous for it.
Exactly. He's the one. But what's crazy about let's a little bit about John Rawls. I didn't even mention this, which is nuts. He's 7 years old, right? What year is this? I had it written down here. 7 years old. He contracts 1928. Okay, he contracts diphtheria. Okay, which is
I can't even,
a
that
crazy
sounds bad.
disease.
I can't remember what it is, but it sounds
Yeah,
bad.
look that up. Look that up. It's like so 7 years old. His brother Bobby visits him, and Bobby contracts the disease and dies. John Rawls survives. The next year, contracts pneumonia. Another brother, Tommy, visits him, contracts pneumonia from John Rawls, dies.
What?
John Rawls survives. Yes. And so
Double survivor's guilt?
double survivor's guilt. Yeah.
Wow.
Essentially killed two
Plus
of his
transmission
brothers.
plus transmission guilt? He's got like survivor's guilt and transmission guilt times 2.
It's crazy. It's
Damn.
crazy. So this is a man who had to live with that and consider the implications of fairness and randomness. He's dealing with contract theory, and it's in that branch essentially, and he's
What's
done
that?
it in a way that's really
What's that? What's contract theory?
Contract theory is a branch of like political philosophy that is kind of it's obsessed or not obsessed. It's focused on the question of how and why we care for each other, what kinds of societies we can build, what are our responsibilities and duties to each other.
Oh, like the social contract. Like
The social contract, yes.
Okay, cool.
So you're completely a neighbor, and we don't know each other, but we're both humans. We're both breathing the same air. We're both sitting on similar plots of land next to bodies of water. What does that mean? And how do we deal with each other? And so this is just one of those. And so that's kind of, it rests on those shoulders.
That's cool. I mean, I think it's interesting that we're recording this during Ramadan, which is, which goes almost a step further in the sense of this isn't a thought experiment. It's like you're asked for 1 month a year as a Muslim to fast for a month, during the day, no water, no food. And it has like a couple functions, as my understanding of it is. And, one of them is to allow you to really build an empathy with the poor, and to really build an empathy with people who don't have food, to actually know. So not just to imagine what it might be like, in the example of the video, to be a single mother in East Detroit, but like to actually feel what it feels like to have hunger in your belly for a month,
Wow.
and
I didn't know that.
yeah, and then and another side of that is that it's supposed to develop a gratefulness too, so that you moving forward you become very grateful, which is just a better outlook on life. And most of the people that I like to hang out with are people that I see that outlook. They tend to be grateful for what they have.
Yeah.
And they count their blessings.
Same.
They count their blessings.
Same.